Hey guys, this is Tom, and in this video I'm going to introduce you to what a pivot table is. So on the notes page directly above this video there is a link to an Excel file that I'm using in this video. So it's called the transactions table. So in this transactions table you can see we have a table where the rows are what we call records and the columns are what we call fields or variables. And we have some records of different types. So, transaction ID, this column here, this field contains records where there's identifiers included. So these are not necessarily numerical variables, they're categorical. We have a date variable that's numeric. We have another categorical variable that's transaction type. And then finally we have a numerical variable that's just raw numbers. And this listing contains details of sales made by a company as well as returns made by customers of the company. And it's a pretty small table, relatively speaking. Usually in practice you'll see something much larger. You'll see data for sales and returns for maybe an entire month or an entire quarter or an entire year. And we have a brief set of data here just for demonstration purposes, but what I want to demonstrate is this concept of pivot tables. So a pivot table allows you to manipulate this data to get subtotals and counts and averages and all sorts of different statistics out of this raw data without editing or manipulating the data directly. So we're going to create a table that ties into this data but doesn't manipulate the data itself. So we're going to go to Insert and then we're going to do Pivot Table, and you see it automatically, Excel automatically highlighted the cells that have data in it. So we're okay with this, we're okay with the selection. We want these cells to be in our pivot table. We're going to put the pivot table as a new sheet down here in Excel. We don't want it in the same sheet as the raw data. And we're going to click OK. Alright, so now we're in this pivot table sheet, and what the pivot table is doing is it's saying, okay, we identified these variables or these fields in your raw data, and you can take these fields and move them around in a table and get different things out of this information. We'll be able to create different totals or subtotals or counts or averages right here in this live interactive table. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to drag this variable amount down here into this box that says values. So these boxes down here are what we use to create our table, our dynamic table, our table that is updated on a live basis. So I'm going to drag amount down here. I want values for amount. And I'm also going to drag transaction type down here. I want both transaction type and amount. Right, so this gives me, you notice in the sheet here, now we have the Excel in this pivot table automatically created a variable that counts the number of transactions and has totaled up the amounts in the raw table. Okay, and you can see that this is accurate because if you do sum of the values in the data right here on the main data sheet, the sum is 309.19, and this is what the pivot table gave us. Right, so without manipulating or altering the original data, we're able to get information out of that data source. Right, now say if we wanted to we'll notice in the raw data we have different transaction types. We have returns and we have sales. Well, what if we wanted to know what the total of returns was separate from the total of sales? What if we wanted to break it down that way? Well, the pivot table allows us to do this by saying you could drag this transaction type into the rows, and now we have subtotals of returns versus sales. So our total of 309.19 in net sales is actually the net of 601.20 of sales and 292.01 of returns. And of our 20 transactions, 11 were sales transactions and 9 were returns. Okay. If we wanted to, down here in the value section, and say we wanted, instead of the totals, total returns or total sales, maybe we were interested in, like, what's the average sale amount that we make to a customer. We could update this field and change it to an average. So now we can see, on average, our sales totaled $55, about $55 per transaction, and the average returns were about $32.45 per transaction. Okay, we could change this into lots of different values here. So say if we wanted to know the max sale, what's the largest sale? We could see now the maximum sale was $99.77. Okay. If we wanted to, we could add dates here. So if we wanted to know how many returns were there on January 1st, 2021, it looks like there was 3. How many sales were there? It looks like there was 2. We want to know the totals. We want to change this back to total. We could change this to sum. And so we can manipulate this in lots and lots of different ways. And pivot tables are really useful to quickly get answers or generate information out of raw data. So we'll be covering pivot tables a lot in this course, and I just wanted to introduce you briefly to what they are and what we can do with them. Thanks for watching.